I've sung the OnePlus 12's praises since its release and called it a better package than the much more expensive Galaxy S24 Ultra, but I haven't yet had time to put them head to head on camera. So strap in and get comfy, this should be a good one. Hey guys, I'm right to address is the delta in price. Samsung's flagship slab phone comes in at $1,300, while OnePlus's premium candy bar device is just $800. That's a $500 difference, or the price of a Steam Deck, between the two. Yet despite this delta, these phones both rock Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processors, 12 gigs of RAM, and UFS 4.0 storage, so are comparably rapid in everything from 3D games, where you want the most frames and the smoothest and the most competitive experience, to flipping back and forth between the same 3 social media apps for 3 hours straight. These are 2 of the fastest mainstream Android phones you can buy right now, eclipsing what Google has offered with its Tensor G3 in the Pixel 8 Pro. And both phones are suited to multimedia consumption too, with their similarly sized 6.8-inch Quad HD Plus 120Hz AMOLED screens. These are some big old no-nonsense phablets. Though because of the chassis shapes, the S24 Ultra feels substantially larger in the hand. And despite both panels really pushing the brightness to the max here and being easily viewable in direct sunlight, there is a clear winner. As long as you set the Samsung's brightness to manual and enable the extra brightness toggle in the notification shade, you will find that the display just gets a hair brighter, which becomes more apparent in HDR content. It's not a huge difference, it's not a big enough delta to make me pick one over the other, but there is a small difference in brightness. More importantly, Samsung's tuning and calibration of its panel is just plain better than the OnePlus's. It's more vibrant and a touch warmer too, which keeps colours looking punchy and exciting. Also, being flat with very tight corner radii means you get a more viewable surface and a more usable space with less glare to boot. It might not look as sleek as the OnePlus's panel, but it does straight up look better, if only by a small amount. And those curved sides of the OnePlus, while less functional in my opinion compared to the Galaxy's flat panel that we all seem to want in our smartphones these days, tie into a more interesting and unique aesthetic. Samsung's decision to square everything off and give you some camera rings on the back corner might look great to you, but it aids in a more sterile and bland look for me. Both phones feel incredibly well bussed and well put together, with the Ultra including a better overall weather sealing certification. But to look at, I have to say I prefer the OnePlus. Subjective though, so you can pick whatever you want. There are 2 distinct hardware features that these two have that set them apart from everything else. OnePlus has its 3-stage alert slider, which I think every phone should honestly have, and then Samsung has its S Pen, which I think has a larger scope for usage and is legitimately more useful, but that is going to depend on what you use your phone for. I'd rather have the alert toggle than the S Pen, but I know people who would think the opposite. So this one really does come down to personal preference, but none of the other phones really on the mainstream market have these features. Samsung software is the better of the two. It'll get support going into the next decade, where OnePlus is only promising updates until 2029. Is this a big deal? No, I think both have more than enough software support, but Samsung's One UI also packs in more useful features with its AI translator, instant slow-mo, and both phones do have a flavour of AI eraser that we'll get into a little bit later. Needless to say, both are running Android 14 and Android 15 updates should be coming fairly soon in this summer. And based on prior track records, they should both get pretty timely updates going forward too. And speaking of timely, actually, one of the OnePlus 12's marquee features is its astonishingly quick charging, with an included brick in the box. It goes from 0 to 100 in under half an hour, where the S24 Ultra takes just over an hour to charge its battery in full, and you will have to purchase that charger separately. What makes this more impressive is the fact that the 12's cell is 400 mAh larger than the S24 Ultra's, and despite the S24 Ultra being a 2-day phone for me, the 12 manages to best it thanks to a combination of the physically larger battery but also software optimizations. So it can honestly do 2.5, sometimes 3 days on a real stretch. Both are going to give you fantastic battery life, some of the best on the market in a flagship phone. It's just that OnePlus does it better and gives you that 100-watt brick in the box, which is pretty great. Where the on-paper specs start to really differ and what separates the men from the boys here is the camera. I'll throw up the specs on screen so you can have a better idea of what the hardware is looking like for both, but they do tend to trade blows in different areas of the spec sheet. Both phones have ultra-wides, 1x and 3x cameras, with the Samsung packing in that extra 5x setup for the longer range shots. While Samsung might have the better overall camera hardware here, OnePlus has that wonderful Hasselblad colour science that has made the phone my favourite for taking stills with, and that is of course a subjective thing. The S24 Ultra's photos tend to come out more technically excellent, with detail being plucked out of shadows, particularly in night mode, looking clearer, but the OnePlus's photos tend to look more realistic and, in my opinion, are more pleasing, with more accurate white balance and a nicer contrast profile. But again, this is subjective. That said, both phones take absolutely terrific images, with loads of dynamic range thanks to the heavy processing going on when you hit that shutter button. Both tend to go quite strong on the colours, so you get punchy and vibrant images whichever way you go here, more so than let's say a Pixel or an iPhone. And overall I found in bright light the Ultra exposed lower than the 12, but flipped in reverse, at night time actually the 12 took the darker shots, I guess to try and capture as much detail as possible. Cropping in at long range using the telephoto camera, you will start to see the S24 Ultra's superior hardware make itself known, with 20 and 30 times shots looking far crisper from the Samsung, where OnePlus's clearly hard-working processing just can't really keep up with what is actually a 3x telephoto lens. So despite the S24 Ultra's downgraded long ranger compared to its predecessor, it still takes the sharper long shots. Both phones can shoot in 8K if you really want to, in 24p on the OnePlus and 30p on the Samsung, though I would just stick to Ultra HD 4K as it looks as good and you get more information per pixel. Samsung's excellent image stabilization is considerably ahead of OnePlus's implementation, so even when walking, the Ultra's video was actually quite a bit smoother, and both shoot Full HD 1080p at 240fps for dedicated slow motion, in case you were looking to capture some high-speed footage. And for augmenting your photos after you've taken them, both phones feature first-party AI erasers for removing unwanted items and blots in your images. Beyond that, Samsung's instant slow-mo is pretty impressive too. From an objective standpoint, the S24 Ultra has the OnePlus 12 beaten, in the camera section at least. I do prefer the colour and the contrast of the Hasselblad setup, so actually for me, I'd pick it over the Samsung, but do let me know in the comments what you think of this, because of course you get more versatility and real power with the S24 Ultra. Regarding the little additional things that you don't see on a spec sheet, I found the S24 Ultra's ultrasonic in-display fingerprint reader to be a fair bit quicker and more accurate than the optical one in the OnePlus 12, which I think is already a pretty good scanner. With regards to connectivity, I found both to be really solid in Wi-Fi and cellular, in both speed and strength, and the Galaxy speakers when playing music seem to have a brighter tone with more clarity. However, for me, there is really no better complete package than the OnePlus 12, whose display is almost as bright, whose cameras are neck and neck with the Galaxy, and whose battery life and charging is considerably better. Chuck in the alert slider that I prefer over an S Pen, but you might have different opinions, and the $500 less asking price. And you have to ask yourself, is this the best Android phone out there? What do you guys think of this head-to-head, guys? I'm sure I've ruffled a few feathers with my opinions on OnePlus. I quite enjoy doing that, to be quite honest. And the truth is that these are fantastic, and OnePlus is making one of the best phones, although Samsung with its Ultra might still be the king. Anyway, whilst you're blasting me in the comments, be sure to hit like if you enjoyed today's content and subscribe to never miss another upload. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.